Joel Embiid has suited up for just 4 games so far this NBA season, and the news regarding his knee continues to sound worse and worse. I want to dive into the latest updates for what we're hearing about the status of the left knee of Joel Embiid, and if there is any hope of him ever becoming fully healthy and the player that he once was at this point. I won't lie right now, that is the bleakest outlook I can remember for Joel Embiid's knee. Optimism does feel at an all-time low for it, and that is especially concerning when factoring in he's on the books for 5 more years, and all of this is built around Joel Embiid. But let's dive into what we know, and I want to start off by pulling up a team statement from the Sixers here, this being initially after that he did miss the handful of most recent games. He was ruled out ahead of the Friday night matchup against the Brooklyn Nets. This is when a lot of this came down. So the initial quote that I want to start with here is, quote, Joel Embiid is managing swelling in his left knee, the team statement said. In consultation with the team's medical staff, Embiid missed tonight's game and will also miss Sunday's game. He is receiving treatment and further updates on his status and will be provided early next week. Embiid was originally listed as questionable in injury reports coming into the game and declared a game-time decision during Coach Nick Nurse's pregame media session. But Embiid never participated in warm-ups and was declared out 30 minutes before tip-off. Quote, it's kind of something that we knew we were going to be dealing with going into the season, Nurse said after the team's 113-98 win over the Nets. They do what they can do to remove the swelling, but it just doesn't feel good enough to go. We were pretty well aware not too much longer after the press conference that he wasn't going to be able to go tonight, and they looked at it again during the game or halftime or whatever and decided that it needed to treat it this weekend and go from there. Now, obviously, Joel Embiid did also miss last night's game at the time of recording this, immediately following the overtime. Well, the next day following the overtime loss to the Rockets here. I'm not overly optimistic we see Joel Embiid in the short-term future. Now, I would love for that to be absolutely wrong, but I do want to dive into a couple other reports here. So I want to start off with Bleacher Report for Ramona Shelburne, who I always do like to acknowledge is one of the more in-the-know national reporters in regards to Joel Embiid and the Sixers. And the title of the article saying, Report, Joel Embiid, 76ers sought multiple opinions on the injury before the contract. Now, to further add to that here, do want to pull up this section, and it writes, amid a disappointing start to the season for star center Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers, an NBA insider shined some light on the franchise's previous attempts to avoid this current predicament. According to ESPN's Ramona Shelburne, quote, the team and Embiid had sought half a dozen medical opinions before signing him to a 3-year, $192.7 million extension this summer, sources said. And of all those consulted, believed the knee could be adequately managed by a combination of strategic rest and procedures to promote healing, which Embiid has regularly undergone since last season. Shelburne added that sources said both the Sixers and Embiid, quote, hoped his troublesome knee injuries would be healthy enough to start the season, but things obviously have not gone as planned. Now, I want to approach this in two separate directions here. Number one, in complete fairness to Joel Embiid, that this is all 100% true, that he's dealing with something really significant here, and there is fair evidence of that. Let's paint the entire Joel Embiid picture here. Let's think about how this man even got to Philadelphia. It is because of injuries. That Joel Embiid was a clear-cut, most talented player in that draft. That was back in the Andrew Wiggins and Jabari Smith as the 1 and 2 picks in that draft. The Sixers sitting at the 3rd selection there allowed Joel Embiid to fall because people were afraid of the broken foot he sustained leading into the NBA draft process. The Sixers then had to wait out 2 full seasons of Joel Embiid before he was able to step foot on the court. That he re-injured that foot, had to get another surgery before his NBA career fully started. It was 2 full seasons after they drafted him that we saw him, that before we were able to see him. Then when he did get on the court, I want to start by talking about some of these knee injuries here. We're talking back in 2017 at this point. So in his 30th career NBA game, Embiid suffers a fall and aggravates his left knee, causing him to miss Philadelphia's next 3 games due to swelling and soreness. Then on January 27, 2017, Embiid scores 32 points in 28 minutes in a loss to the Rockets, which would ultimately be the final game of his rookie season. He returns to the sideline with left knee swelling. The knee swelling is a product of, quote, a minor meniscus tear, per reports. Embiid is listed as day for the Sixers. Then, just a couple weeks later, Embiid is ruled out for the remainder of the 2016-17 season after his meniscus injury, quote, appears more pronounced on a follow-up MRI. He finishes the rookie year having played just 31 games. And then, of course, the next one being an orbital fracture there. But the flash forward a little bit ahead, once again, this was back in 2017. Let's look at last year. 7 years later here. An awkward play leads the Warriors forward Jonathan Kuminga falling on Joel Embiid's left knee. It is revealed that Embiid suffered a torn lateral meniscus on the play and that the injury would require surgery on his left knee. Then, back at April 25th, after scoring 50 points in Game 3 of the NBA playoffs, Embiid revealed that he'd been diagnosed with Bell's palsy, and then in preparation to the Olympics, Embiid brushed off the injury concerns. So obviously plenty of gaps in here. Let's not forget the Nets series that he also tore his meniscus going down when he went up for a block. Pretty awkward fall there. There's been plenty of other opportunities. Since to kind of give the basics of it, the meniscus is not this ligament that's going to control how much power he has in his knee, his cutting, anything. It's the cushion. It's how you feel pain. It's what prevents you from feeling pain when you're cutting hard, jumping, all the things that are incredibly important at the sport of basketball. It may be the reality that there is just no meniscus left to deal with here, and that is where the pain comes in here. This, in a lot of ways, had become more of a pain tolerance type thing. But if the knee is swelling up like that, that's also an injury type thing. So it does feel like there's a little bit more to this with Joel Embiid here. The frustrating reality is there is not really a fix to this. They no longer do surgeries where they try and bolster up the meniscus. That has not proven effective in athletes. It is kind of one of those things where this may be it for Joel. This may be what the situation is, and it is just management from here on out. Now, on the other side of things, to kind of present the other side of the coin here, it's fair to assess we want to see a little bit more desire to get on the court. That has probably been the case with Joel Embiid. Now, we can point fingers at whether this is a Sixers issue or a Joel Embiid issue, but the reality is this team will continue to get fined for inconsistent statements about Joel Embiid if they do not button up how they're addressing things, how they're going out and speaking about things. What is the issue? I think from start to finish this year, the outlook would be significantly more positive or at least more neutral on the situation if there was just more clarity. If the Sixers had entered the season, stood up there at the podium with Joel Embiid and said, here's the deal. He's got some lingering knee issues. He tweaked it at the Olympics, or it's something in the offseason that is not quite as solid as we want it to be. We're going to work with him, make sure we get him on the court as often and as much as possible. But the reality is he is not quite ready to start the season. That would have made things a whole lot easier for everyone here. The Sixers are saving money. The fans are a little bit more understanding of the communication here. The reality is there's been a lot of left to dry. Now, Joel does deserve criticism for this because I do know for sure that this is Joel's decision. That I know he, more so than most athletes, is more picky about things getting out, that he does take it personal. I think he really wants to, hates having that injury-prone label attached to him, so he tries to be as vague as possible. I think that's downright dumb at this point. I think the Sixers should have had to step in a while ago and say, that is not how we're doing business anymore. I understood that may have been the case with past regimes, the other general managers, the other front office personnel that have run the show. It is actively detrimental to the Sixers team that continues to be the case. It is unacceptable, and maybe within the walls of the locker room that they know more clearly than we do here, but it is unacceptable not to go into an every single night matchup and not know whether your best player has a chance of playing or not. This continued process of he's going to go through warm-ups and then we're going to see what happens from there just does not work for the Sixers team, and I do think is harming this team. Let's not forget, they are 3-14 at the point of recording this. They're in 14th point place in the Eastern Conference. They are a bad basketball team. If Joel Embiid is not the next guy is not stepping on the floor and helping to save this team, they're going to have some really tough conversations about what the best direction for the future is. For the time being, you basically just got to ride it out. And I love to reinforce this here, but for the trade Joel Embiid crowd, which I hear you, I'm more frustrated than I ever have been with the big fella overall, but that is a conversation that cannot be even entertained until this offseason as he signed that extension, that massive $193 million extension just this summer here. So we can't even entertain that until we get to that point. Right now, I think how the rest of the season goes is going to impact all these conversations. From the Sixers angle of, do you have a hope that you can get in the playoffs and have this guy to have a chance? He may not be the MVP version of himself that he once was, but that's why you bring in Paul George. That's why you have Tyrese Maxey. That's why Jared McCain is a key part of this team moving forward. There are other players to be leaned on in better ways than was the case in past seasons here. On the other side of the thing, if we are truly to go down that path, if you're a team around the rest of the NBA, are you watching this situation play out with Joel Embiid and thinking, that's a guy I want on my team? The way that he's handling things, pushing reporters, being suspended, no idea whether he's playing on a night-to-night basis. That's the missing piece on our team. I find it hard to believe that teams aren't being skeptical or having their own red flags pop up immediately. So you can't just trade Joel Embiid for the sake of trading Joel Embiid. There has to be something coming back in return. There has to be something that benefits the organization if you're going to even entertain those conversations. And I think it's going to take Joel looking like himself for a stretch of time for that even to be an option there. So the reality is this is trending in a direction that I wish it was not the case. I do feel like we're closer to Embiid breakup than ever before. I also feel like there's no chance of us recouping the appropriate just return on a trade for that to be worth it from an organizational standpoint. So hopefully this is a short-term thing, that they can somehow find a way to get him healthy, find whatever sort of, routine he needs to get in or whatever medical procedures need to be done to make sure that he can play basketball for the foreseeable future. But it does feel like all these little injuries that have happened year after year, all the little things, the little tweaks, little bumps and bruises that have been surrounding Joel Embiid throughout the entirety of career, does feel like they're finally stacking up and taking a toll. He's over 30 years old, and if we're going to be directly honest with ourselves, it's kind of impressive that he's been able to maintain this level of play, this all NBA caliber of performance when factoring in all the injuries that he has battled. I hope this is not the beginning of the end, but it feels more like it than any other time I can remember as a Joel Embiid supporter here. So we'll see how things move from here, but they need to see this guy playing a little bit more basketball than has been the case for everyone's sake here. For Joel, for the Sixers team, and for the fans, of course, watching. This team needs to turn things around. If not, we're having some really tough conversations this offseason, and I do think that seems to be the direction we're heading at this current point. Hope next time I give an update on it that I don't feel that way, that we are trending back in the right direction, but for the time being, it is bleak in the outlook of Joel Embiid and the Philadelphia 76ers. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. Is this the beginning of the end of the Joel Embiid experience? What is even the proper trade outlook you should have? I do think, unfortunately, this would fall in the category of moving on just to move on rather than something that can actively help this Sixers organization, but that does feel like the reality and the way their hands are currently cuffed. So let me know what you guys think in the comments. As always, make sure you're smashing that subscribe button and dropping a like if you have not already. We'll be back talking to you next time right here on Sixers Digest. Peace.